In this video, I'll be addressing some of the key comments and questions you guys had about the all-weather protection kit / Mudflaps for your Tesla Model 3. Some of the big issues you identified was the fact that dirt builds up behind them, they might actually damage your paintwork, that they keep hitting the floor, and the effect they have on range. So after they've been fitted for just 2 weeks, I'll be removing them to see what's been going on behind there, plus a range test comparison looking at what they're like on versus off. So let's talk about the one that seemed to come up the most in the comments initially, and that's the fact that when you go over speed bumps, they tend to hit the road surface. Now, the Mudflaps don't really have much ground clearance in the best of circumstances. This is just me in my Model 3 with no additional weight in the car. So consider how this might be looking with 4 adults and luggage for a big trip. I've then gone out of my way to find things I think the Mudflaps are going to catch on. I've found from experience that I've not heard any grindings as I go over standard speed bumps. The odd one or two which haven't been built up to the normal spec do seem to cause some issues though. But from this footage, I'd say 9 out of 10 times, not a problem. It only seemed to cause issues if I was going closer to the speed limit and hitting the speed bump particularly hard, which I don't tend to do. When the Mudflaps do become problematic though, is if I'm going up at like an angled drive or entering or leaving a potholed lay-by, or going over speed bumps that are very small in width. Some comments had mentioned that they'd been hearing them touch the floor going round a roundabout. I tried a couple even with bumps on, and although I came close, you can see I didn't quite touch the floor. As I said though, the car is running very light at the moment, and you can see the clearance isn't great. One element I did want to highlight though on these shots was look how it's deflecting the stones away from the bodywork. So it does seem pretty effective at doing what it's meant to be doing. So does my Model 3 bottom out? Yes. But it's not often and generally caused by abnormal circumstances or road surface. But with a bit more weight in the car, looking at this video, I think it would happen more frequently. We're just going to leave this footage running just to show how close it comes, and I quite like watching the stones fly off in slow motion. So another common question that came up in the comments was should you have received them? And it seems Tesla's rollout has been pretty inconsistent. Some Model 3 owners that have had their Model 3 for over a year got emails. Some who just got their Model 3 had to ask. Others had them just thrown in the boot at delivery. On all occasions, it seems in the UK at least, Tesla will supply them if you ask. So if you do want some and you haven't got any, just email the service centre and they should sort it out for you. Right, so having concluded that they could bottom out, is the rubbing going to cause damage to the bodywork of the Model 3? Time to take these off and have a look. So before we get into how much dirt has built up behind these Mudflaps, let's have a look at any potential damage that's been caused by the rubbing from the grounding of the Mudflaps. You can see the majority of the area around the Mudflaps are actually plastic, so that's not going to cause much of an issue there, but it's these side seals where they wrap around a little bit that could rub through the paintwork. Now when I first peeled them off, it did look like there were a few scuff marks, but they seem to wipe away pretty easily, so I couldn't see any damage at the moment, but we are only 2 weeks in. One viewer did say a good idea though, and that was to put some tape over that area to maybe protect it from rubbing, and you'll be able to see if it's starting to wear through the tape or not, and hopefully protect the paintwork a little bit. So how much dirt did I find when I removed them? A lot is the answer. Remember, these have only been on for 2 weeks and I haven't been doing a huge amount of driving. Now, where I live, there are a lot of country roads and that's where I do the majority of my driving. So there is a lot of mud on the road. It might not be this bad if you live in a town centre, but this is still pretty surprising in my opinion. The bigger problem is this though, look at it. It's like sand and it's still very wet. It hasn't been wet here for the last few days. Admittedly, it has been very cold though, but it's just holding the moisture. Now the Mudflaps do have a drainage hole at the bottom that let water out, but with this much mud in there, nothing is coming out. I'll empty out the mud and see how quickly it will become blocked again. That is not much mud to make that drainage effectively non-existent, which means that any water could be in there for days. I'm not sure what's behind the plastic arch, but I'm guessing water sitting around it can't be a good thing. That's pretty crazy. Okay, onto the range test. Now this was conducted the same as the aero wheels test. If you haven't seen that yet, I compared the effect the aero wheels have on the range. It was quite a surprising result actually, so if you haven't checked that video out yet, go and have a look. It's the same stretcher dual carriageway, everything such as the heater, windscreen wipers, heated seats, lights, they were all off. So the only variable would be the Mudflaps. Now, runs 1 and 3 were with the Mudflaps on, and runs 2 and 4 were with them off. The reason I do it like this is to limit the amount of the effect any weather, wind or car conditions might have. Tyre pressures, battery temperature, all consistent for each run, and the watt hour per mile was measured between 2 points on the run. So the Model 3 had got up to 70 mile an hour, and then I hit the reset on the trip meter. I did a north and a south leg to hopefully counteract any difference the wind direction might make, and each leg was just over 8 miles long. The results were pretty consistent, so I'm fairly confident in the accuracy of these results. So on run 1, this was with the Mudflaps on, remember, we covered 8.4 miles going south and got an average watt hour per mile of 289. We then reversed it, came back north, did 8.1 miles and got 274, which gave an average for the Mudflaps on of 281.5 watt hours per mile. Run 2, I whipped the Mudflaps off. We did the south run first, followed by the north run. The south run got 288 and the north run 268, giving us an average of 278 watt hours per mile. I then, despite it being very cold, put the Mudflaps back on, and we did the south run that got us 293 watt hours per mile, and then the north run which got us 268, giving us an average with the Mudflaps back on of 277.5 watt hours per mile. And then the final run, run 4, I took the Mudflaps off again. We got the south run at 287 watt hours per mile, the north run at 268, giving us an average of 278, which was actually exactly the same as run 2. So overall, with runs 1 and 3 combined, we got an average of 279.5 watt hours per mile, and with the Mudflaps off, 278 watt hours per mile, which makes about 0.5% difference, which I think is too close to say is any significance. So there you go, doesn't affect the range at all, but that dirt and moisture buildup could potentially cause you some major issues. There's pros and cons to this all-weather protection kit, and I guess it's going to come down to your own circumstances and personal choice. For me, I'm going to leave them on for the time being and probably have a look at them again in a month's time, and then definitely remove them over the summer. Don't forget to like, share, comment and subscribe. Thanks for watching, I'll see you again soon.